Thanks very much, Antoinette. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for joining us this afternoon after potentially a very long day teaching. I do appreciate it. Um, we will be looking at the applied science level 2 and 3 state of affairs for this afternoon. I am joined by Irene. Irene, would you mind just introducing yourself quickly for me, please?
Hi, my name's Irene Mohoidin. I'm the Science Subject Advisor, so I'm here to support Becky with this training. I'll be answering the questions in the background. I'm also here to support you throughout the year with any questions you may have with our
Amazing. Thanks very much, Irene. The state of play today, I'm going to take you through quite a lot of information through a slide deck, running through the status as it is at the moment, curriculum overview, some detail around the applied science qualifications. We will have some time at the end for Q&A. So what I will ask, please, you will notice that you've got your cameras and your mics disabled just for the time being. That's just because there's quite a few of you on the call, and you might find that any question is answered throughout the slide deck itself. So if you can just hold back posting questions in the chat just until the end of the presentation, and then absolutely, if we haven't answered something, or if you want to go back and review something, if you're not quite sure, we can absolutely do that. But if you wouldn't mind just holding back on those questions until I've got through the presentation, you might find that your question is answered as we go through this information this afternoon. Now, there is quite a lot of it, so apologies for that, but we felt it's important that you're given as much information at this point in time as possible. So without further ado, I will say that the recording, this is being recorded, the recording will be sent out to you over the coming days, and also you will have this slide deck as well. So you will get this sent on after today's event. So in the coming days, you will receive that via email. So what we're looking at this afternoon is we are looking at the context of the reform, where we sit currently in terms of the outcomes of the rapid review. We will look directly at the impact of that on funding for science sector qualifications. I'll then talk you through implications in terms of transferring students, topping up students, those kinds of things. We'll then go through our new qualifications, where our offer is, and looking at what resources and support materials there are for our current qualifications and our new qualifications. And then towards the end of the presentation, we'll quickly look at level 2 science qualifications, what the situation is regarding those. And then we'll move on to useful links where you can find out some further information if you're still not too sure, where we go from here in terms of our next steps, and then we'll get to Q&A at the end. So in terms of context, so for those of you who aren't quite sure where we are in terms of the reform timeline, so in 2021, the level 3 reform was announced, and that really fundamentally split the 16 to 19 landscape into two pathways: academic pathways and technical pathways. Academic pathway would be predominantly A levels alongside AAQs, and the technical pathway would be fronted up by the T levels alongside some technical occupational type qualifications. In 2022, we had the criteria that was released for those new qualifications in that space, and we were able to submit qualifications in various cycles dependent on subject sector. In 2023, we were able to submit qualifications for the science sector because we were deemed as cycle 1 qualifications. And subsequently, we have had our alternative academic qualifications in applied science and medical science approved for funding from 2025, and I'll talk more about that later. In addition to that, we then had a general election, and as part of that process, we went through a rapid review. Now, what that did was that reviewed current qualifications, current offer, and looked at where we would go next in terms of next steps for the level 3 reform rollout. So that happened in July. In December, we were notified of the outcome of that rapid review, which happened in July 2024. Now, the purpose of the rapid review was to consider funding options for qualifications that were due to be defunded in 2025. So it very much focused on this September and what was happening this September in terms of qualifications. It re-looked at those qualifications that appeared to overlap with T-levels and really have an emphasis on cycle 1 qualifications at level 3, and really where any gaps were, if that was appropriate in terms of funding, where AAQs or technical qualifications weren't available. So the outcomes were published in December 2024, and there were a few key outcomes which I'm just going to highlight with you over the next couple of slides. So the first key outcome is that the alternative academic qualifications, so those qualifications in applied science and medical science that have been approved for funding in cycle 1, they will continue as planned for First Teach September 2025. So the AAQs, so that's the smaller sized qualifications, so anything 360 guided learning hours or less, 1 A-level size or less, they will continue to be rolled out in September 2025 for those subject areas that are deemed as cycle 1, of which science is one of those. As a result of that, all RQF BTEC national qualifications of 180 or 360 guided learning hours will be defunded from the 31st of July 2025. That is where there are direct replacements for the new BTEC nationals in the form of AAQs. And I'll take you through exactly what that means for science in just a second. I think one of the most important key outcomes to highlight is the idea behind set learner packages for level 3 programs has been scrapped. So what we mean by that is that originally there had been a suggestion that 1 AAQ could be studied alongside 2 A-levels, and that was the only level 3 full-time program that would be available for learners taking an AAQ qualification. That now has changed, and that program cap no longer exists. So the impact of that is that centres are able to freely choose qualifications that form the best progression route for their individual learners. And I will talk more about this with an emphasis on science in a few slides' time. Now, it's important to note that this rapid review really focused around cycle 1 and certain subject areas, and that every single subject was taken individually and will have a different funding timeline. So if you are logging into this, but you also are logging into the health and social care or business, networking events, for example, you may find that slightly different timelines are presented to you. And that is because the rapid review and obviously the cycles are different for different subject areas. So everything I say to you today is directly relevant for science. However, if you're looking at different subject areas, please do just double check those dates aren't different, or if you hear different dates, it's because they may well be on a slightly different timeline to the ones presented here for science. The only other thing to say, a key outcome was that level 2 cycle 1 will continue to be First Teach September 2025. Now, that doesn't have a direct impact on science because science was not in cycle 1 of the level 2 qualifications, but just be aware that was another outcome of the rapid review. So what does this mean for the science sector? Well, there are a few key outcomes to highlight to you this afternoon. So I've talked a little bit already about the 180, so the AS level, and the 360 A level equivalent qualifications. So they will continue to be defunded in applied science. So that's the certificate and the extended certificate from this September. Okay, so you are currently on your last cohort of first registrations for those qualifications. From 2025, so September 2025, the new applied science AAQ will be available for subsequent years. So there are direct replacements for that. In terms of the foundation diploma in applied science, that is in its current last teaching year. So the first teach for that qualification for new learners, we are currently in the last year for new learners. That has stayed the same. So nothing has changed. That is still being defunded on the 31st of July, 2025. So you will currently be in the last year of new registrations for that qualification. Perhaps some of the most significant change has happened around the 720, so the diploma, and the 1080, the extended diploma applied science qualifications. What's happened with those qualifications is that they have been extended for an additional year. So you can continue to deliver those qualifications for this academic year to new registrations, and for 25-26 for new learners as well. So that means you can have new registrations and new cohorts on the 720 and the 1080 applied science in September 2025. So that has changed. It has been extended for a further year. The current information that we have is that from September 2026 to 2027, currently that is scheduled to be defunded in those years, but obviously we will give you more information as we have more information about that. But currently you can continue to deliver the 720 and the 1080 in applied science for one additional year, which is fantastic news. In addition to that, some other areas of significant change are around the forensic science qualifications. So these qualifications in all sizes were scheduled to be defunded as of the 31st of July 2025. That has changed. So those qualifications in all sizes, so the foundation diploma all the way up to the extended diploma, have been extended for a further year. So you can have new learners registering on those qualifications in September 2025, so this September, and you can take them through to September 2026, and then on to September 2020 or July 2027. So those qualifications have also been extended an additional year. Another side note for those of you that teach across the science sector is applied psychology was also scheduled to be defunded this year. That has also seen an extension, and so that will also be available from September 2025 through to July 2026. So that's 1 year extension for new learners. It's worth saying at this point that I'm talking about first teach date. So when you first register your learners, as long as you register your learners on a 2-year program, you can continue to deliver that program in the subsequent second year. So for example, if you ran the 1080 in forensic science and you took on new learners in September 2025 and they were registered over a 2-year program for the 1080 qualification, you can continue to deliver that qualification in 2026, 2027. Okay, so we are talking about first registrations and when the funding ends for new learners. So with that in mind, I think there's a little bit of clarity required around what that means for your learners and transitioning between different programs. So if you commonly register students this year on a 180 program, so that is the certificate size in applied science, and you are intending to top them up in the academic year 2025-2026, the 360 qualification in the RQF framework will not be available for you to top up to. So you need to make sure that those learners are registered on the 360 program before the end of the funding period, which is the 31st of July 2025. Now, how you can go about that, I'll talk you through in just a second. Additionally, if you have students who traditionally register on a 360, so an extended certificate program, and then they top up to a 720 program in year 2, you will need to make sure that they are registered on the appropriate program, because obviously in 2025-2026, we will have the new AAQ at extended certificate size. You will not be able to top them up to the 720 RQF framework. So they will need to be registered straight onto the 720, because the two frameworks aren't necessarily compatible and you won't be able to transfer learners between the two. The same can be said for those learners that have fallback qualifications, so will transfer from larger sizes to smaller sizes. We need to make sure that the two qualifications are the same framework and they are compatible to drop down to or fall back to. So things that are considerations moving forward. So I've talked about this top-up idea. So the top-up is where you have learners that have certified on a program and they are looking to re-register to top up to a larger program. So in that instance, you will need to make sure that the two programs are the same framework, or that so 720 to 1080 would be absolutely fine. However, the 360 to 720 would be on two different frameworks. And so we would need to make sure that you are registering on the largest size rather than using a top-up model. If you are looking to move your students to the larger sizes and they haven't certified, then they will need to be transferred. So if you have current learners that are on a 360 program now, but you are looking for them to ultimately do the 720, then you will need to make sure that they are transferred over. If you are with learners on the 180, the certificate sized qualification, you will need to make sure that they are transferred up to the 360 size before the July cutoff date, so that you can continue to deliver in the current RQF framework that extended certificate. So it is quite confusing. And if you do need support around dates, then please do just contact us here at Pearson and we'll do our best to help you in terms of when you need to transfer or top up learners. But just be aware that we are looking at two different frameworks. And so we need to make sure that learners are registered for the right program before the time that the funding runs out. The other outcome that I said I'd talk about a bit later on is to do with study programs. So the rules of combination have changed. So that was an outcome of the rapid review. And so you're now free to design programs that are suitable and are right for your individual students. So there are no restrictions around what style of qualification can make up the combination within your full-time learner programs. So these qualifications have been designed to be taken alongside 2 A-levels. That is absolutely fine, and that is what these qualifications have been designed to do. So you may have a learner that's decided to do the applied science AAQ alongside geography and psychology A-level. That's a legitimate package. That's absolutely fine if that is right for their progression route. You may have a learner who would rather take more AAQs. So you may have a learner that wants to take applied science, AAQ, an AAQ in information technology that's available from September, and an A-level in mathematics. That is absolutely fine. That combination, as long as it's appropriate for the progression route, that's absolutely fine. You may have a learner who wants to take all vocational qualifications. So you may have somebody who wants to do their AAQ in applied science alongside the health and social care, and that should be their AAQ. Sorry, apologies for that. That's new in September. And they may also want to combine that with an RQF, extended certificate in sport and exercise science. Now, that will remain an RQF because sport is in a later cycle and we don't have new AAQs in that space yet. So that's again a legitimate package as long as it's appropriate for the progression route. That is something that can be done. So there is no direct combination that has to be sat for these new AAQ qualifications. So that is something that is different, and as I say, was introduced as part of the outcomes of this rapid review. Now, that's not to say they're the only combinations. You can use any combination that you see fit for your learners to ensure that there is progression into their given route. So in terms of applied science and the qualification moving forward, what does it look like? The specification and all of the sample assessment material for these qualifications is available on the dedicated Applied Science AAQ webpage. But just to give you a brief overview, so the two qualifications are exactly the same size. So they are both 360 guided learning hours, and they are both deemed to be extended certificates. The difference in title is alternative academic qualifications is a qualification type that they are, which has moved away from the applied generals in the RQF qualifications that are the current qualifications. Now, you'll notice that the unit structure has changed. So we now have separate units in biology, chemistry, and physics. And each of those units will have their own external assessment, which is in the form of a written examination style paper. That is no different really to Unit 1, where we have 3 separate papers. It's just these 3 separate papers will be treated as individual units, and so will have their own dedicated time to be sat, and they will have their own dedicated component, so they can be sat or resat separately. You don't have to take all 3 sciences again. If you want to do a reset, you can just reset the element that your learner found most challenging. Unit 4, the practical scientific procedures and techniques, is very similar to the current Unit 2. And so that practical element and the skill element is very much still at the heart of these qualifications. The one thing you'll notice is the optional units and the way the optional units have been designed in this new AAQ qualification is that they really focus around skill development and developing a broad skill set within the science sector. So not all learners want to progress to the same degree programs, the same career choices. And so this qualification is designed to give a broad skill base in the science sector that would allow learners to progress in any given progression route that they choose. So Unit 5 focuses on those practical scientific investigation skills, looking at how you take a scientific investigation from the start, from that hypothesis, that idea, all the way through to drawing conclusions and evaluations. Unit 6 is thinking about science in society and how we articulate and communicate different science ideas. And I don't know why my screen's just gone dead. There we go. So that's the difference between the two. So they draw on wider skills. And as I say, if you want to see more detail about specifics of these units, please do check out the specification that's available. There is also, for those of you looking to transition from the current extended certificate, looking at teaching resources for the AAQ, there is also a transition guide, which gives detailed information about what has stayed the same, what is slightly different, and how you can repurpose and utilize resources. So that's the qualification as it stands at this moment in time. The optional units and the practical unit are still internally assessed. The internal assessments are slightly different, and I'll cover those in just a second. But we are retaining our familiar standards verification process, and we are maintaining our pass, merit, distinction, grade profiles. So those things will be in context to familiar to what you currently have. But one thing that is new for these AAQs is that they have sustainability, digital, and transferable skills all mapped to the qualifications to give you more opportunity to identify and develop those skills. So what are we doing to support you moving forward? So from spring 2025, we will offer Getting Ready to Teach live and on-demand training, and we will also look at providing specific guidance around internal assessments. We will offer bite-sized videos, so looking at specific roles within your centre. So for example, if you're an exams officer, how we can support exams officers, looking at how you can run internal assignments, which are known as Pearson set assignment briefs. We will be looking throughout the summer 2025 at further Getting Ready to Teach workshops alongside transitioning workshops, specifically looking at moving from one qualification to another. We will continue to provide support around the internal assessment, but also provide support around the external assessment as well. As we receive further feedback from yourselves, we'll develop further training materials specifically designed for those areas where support is needed or required the most, based on the feedback that we receive. So in terms of the internal assignment, it is slightly different moving forward for the AAQs. So currently, for those of you delivering the Applied Science Extended Certificate, you'll be familiar with the phrase AABs, so Authorized Assignment Briefs. That is changing slightly moving forward, and Authorized Assignment Briefs are known as Pearson Set Assignment Briefs for the new AAQ qualifications. The significant difference is that the Pearson Set Assignment Brief is set. So that's set by us here at Pearson, and you cannot make changes to it at a centre level. So whereas now you can choose whether you deliver the AAB or you design your own based on the relevant criteria, moving forwards for the AAQs, the PSAB is a set assignment, and so you cannot make any changes to that assignment at centre level. It will continue to be completed at centre level and marked at centre level, and it will continue to go through our very familiar standards verification process. So that hasn't changed, but the ability to make changes or design your own internal assignment has changed, and so that's something to be mindful of. In terms of continuing support, so for both our current RQF qualifications that have been extended for an additional year and these new AAQ qualifications, we will continue to have teaching and learning support in the form of teaching and learning packs. We will continue to have our subject advisors. Our very own Irene is here with us today, and we will continue to have access to tools such as Exam Wizard and Results Plus. They will also be maintained for both qualifications that are continuing and also new qualifications moving forward. For those of you wanting specific information about the new qualifications and the AAQs, what will be available, we are looking to provide students books, which will give concise coverage of the qualifications. They will cover both mandatory and optional units, and they will be available in both print and ebook formats. We will also provide teacher packs. So teaching resources, tools, activity sheets, quick checks, Those types of things will also be available as part of the paid resource package. We are looking to have samples of those available early 2025, so in the next couple of months. And we are looking to have full published availability of those from April 2025. So paid resources, we will look to have those available in the coming months. In terms of level 2, so level 2, for those of you who may not be familiar with the time frame for level 2 reform, so we have gone through cycle 1 of the level 2 reform, and those qualifications that are technical qualifications have been rolled out and will continue to be rolled out from September 2025. For cycle 2, currently cycle 2 of level 2 has been paused. So as of yet, we don't have any further details around what will happen with cycle 2 qualifications and when those will be available. At the moment, the information we have is that this will be revisited later in 2025. And obviously, as we have more information about when those qualifications will be available, we will pass that on to you. For the time being, you can continue to deliver our BTEC First in Applied Science. If that's something that you deliver currently, you can continue to deliver those qualifications. They are still available, and until such point that the level 2 reform reaches a cycle where these are directly affected, they will remain available for you. Okay, so that is still there. Unfortunately, I can't give you any more information regarding level 2. The information we have at the moment is that it is paused. Hopefully, we will know more information about submission windows and when that will continue as we progress throughout the year. So in terms of useful links, we do have a dedicated web page that it will give you information about what qualifications are funded for that current academic year, what qualifications will be funded for subsequent academic years. It's all available on this webpage. You will get a copy of this slide deck, and so you can click directly on those links and it will take you to those web pages. So please do continue to check in with those web pages because it will have the most up-to-date information. And as you can imagine, that seems to be changing quite rapidly at this moment in time. And don't forget, you also do have the Department for Education links. So there are full information around what qualifications remain funded to deliver in the current academic year and the next academic year. So you can always double check, and we do have all of the links here for you to have a look at. And there's also a really, really helpful FAQ page. So if you have a question, you think probably the answer will be there somewhere, have a quick check at the FAQs rather than go through all of the paperwork. You can have a quick check at that. So that is really, really helpful as well. So when these slide decks come out, all of these links will be available to you, and there is a wealth of information that's included within them. So in terms of next steps, where are we now? So the current position is that cycle 2 for both level 2 and level 3 reform have currently been paused. Once we have further information about the future of those, we will obviously let you know, but that's where we are with those. So level 2 will affect science, level 3 will affect other subject areas. The DFE, we have been told, will open up a new cycle 2 for additional cycles in health and social care, applied science, construction, and digital. So we have been notified that there will be additional submission windows for additional qualifications to be submitted in those sector areas. We do not know any further detail about the size of those qualifications or indeed the specific subject areas, for those qualifications at this point in time. We hope that we will get further information on that in the not too distant future. The other thing to bear in mind is that for those subject areas that aren't in cycle 1, so science, those qualifications will form part of the curriculum and assessment review. So there is an ongoing curriculum and assessment review. Those subject areas that are not cycle 1 effectively will be pushed back into the curriculum and assessment review. And therefore, you may find that qualifications are retained until such point that the curriculum assessment review outcome is known. And at that point, we'll know more about the future landscape in other subject areas and the wider science subject area as we progress throughout 2025. So we should know further information later on, but it might take a while for the curriculum assessment review to happen for us to know sort of more longer term projections for what the post-16 landscape will look like.